Some women don't leave because the door is locked. They leave because they finally realize they've been holding the key all along. This is the story of a woman who forgot she had wings until the moment. Someone told her she was too heavy to fly. The ballroom sparkled like a jewelry box under the crystal chandeliers, filled with the city's elite celebrating another successful charity auction. Natalia Romano stood near the marble pillar, her emerald dress hugging her frame perfectly, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo. To everyone watching, she was the picture of grace, the enviable wife of Damian Archer, the man whose real estate empire stretched across 3 states. But beneath the flawless makeup and practiced smile, Natalia felt like a beautifully wrapped gift that nobody wanted to open. Damian moved through the crowd with the confidence of a man who owned every room he entered. His tailored navy suit, his commanding voice, his calculated charm. Everything about him screamed success. Natalia watched him from across the room, remembering when that same confidence had made her feel safe instead of small. 7 years of marriage had taught her the difference between being cherished and being collected. "Your husband is so accomplished," a woman in diamonds whispered to her, admiration dripping from every word. Natalia nodded politely, murmuring a thank you that felt hollow in her throat. Accomplished, yes. Present, no. She couldn't remember the last time Damian had asked about her day, her dreams, or anything beyond whether she'd picked up his dry cleaning. The evening's program began, and Damian was called to the stage as one of the event's major sponsors. Natalia felt the familiar tug on her arm as he gestured for her to join him. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she made her way up the steps. Feeling hundreds of eyes following her movement, the photographer positioned them together, adjusting angles and lighting. "Closer, please," the photographer called out cheerfully. "Let's capture this beautiful couple." Natalia stepped toward her husband, forcing warmth into her expression. But then Damian did something that would crack the careful facade she'd been maintaining for years. He placed his hand on her shoulder, not tenderly, but as if positioning a prop, said loud enough for the nearby guests to hear, "Smile, darling. Look pretty, but stay away from the center. I need the focus on the donation check." The words landed like ice water down her spine. The camera flashed, capturing what would look like a perfect moment, but Natalia felt something inside her shatter. Around them, a few people chuckled awkwardly. Others pretended not to hear, but she heard it. She felt every syllable carve itself into her heart. Look pretty, but stay away. It wasn't just an instruction for a photograph. It was the summary of their entire marriage. Her smile froze. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped back, exactly as instructed, fading into the background while he beamed at the cameras. The applause that followed felt like mockery. When the photo session ended, Damian didn't even glance at her as he returned to his conversation with investors. She was dismissed, her purpose served. Natalia descended the stage on shaking legs. Her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of these people who already saw her as nothing more than Damian Archer's accessory. She moved toward the powder room, her breath coming in short gasps. But halfway there, she changed direction. She kept walking past the restrooms, past the coat check, straight toward the exit. The cool night air hit her face as she pushed through the venue doors. And suddenly, she could breathe again. The sounds of the party faded behind her as she stood on the marble steps, looking out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Damian's message read simply, "Where did you go? People are asking about you. Not are you okay? Not I'm sorry. Just concerned about appearances." Natalia's hands moved almost automatically, pulling up her contacts until she found the name she hadn't called in months. Elena Rossi, her childhood best friend, the one whose wedding she'd missed last year because Damian had a business dinner, the one whose calls she'd stopped returning because maintaining. Her own friendships seemed to exhaust what little energy she had left. The phone rang twice before. Elena's warm voice answered, "Natalia? Is that really you?" Natalia's voice cracked. "I need to get away. Can I come to you?" There was no hesitation. "I'm at the cottage. Come now. Tonight. I'll leave the porch light on." Natalia didn't go back inside. She walked to the valet, handed over her ticket, waited for her car with her arms wrapped around herself despite the expensive shawl draped over her shoulders. When Damian called, she let it ring. When he called again, she turned off her phone. The drive through the city felt surreal, watching her life through someone else's eyes. She passed their penthouse building without slowing down. Drove past the boutiques where she'd bought countless dresses for countless events. Past the restaurant where Damian proposed 7 years ago with a ring, but without getting down on one knee, because he said that. Tradition was outdated. The highway stretched before her. Leading away from everything she'd known, tears finally came, streaming down her face and ruining the makeup that had taken an hour to apply. But she didn't care anymore. For the first time in years, she was doing something that wasn't carefully planned or approved or designed to make someone else comfortable. Elena's cottage is at 2 hours north, nestled in rolling hills where the air smelled like pine and possibility. When Natalia finally pulled into the gravel driveway, she saw the porch light glowing like a beacon. Elena stood in the doorway, older but exactly the same, with her wild curly hair and paint-stained hands. They didn't speak at first. Elena simply opened her arms, and Natalia collapsed into them, sobbing years' worth of silent disappointments and swallowed dreams. They stood there until Natalia had no tears left, until the night wrapped around them like a blanket, until the girl who'd forgotten how to feel began to remember what it was like to be held without condition inside cozy cottage. Elena made chamomile tea while Natalia sat curled on the worn sofa, still wearing her elegant gown that now felt like a costume she couldn't wait to shed. "Tell me everything," Elena said gently, settling beside her. And Natalia did. She told her about the years of feeling invisible, about the parties where she was decoration, about the way Damian's mother, Catherine, constantly reminded her that she'd married above her station, about forgetting who she was before she became Mrs. Archer. She told her about tonight, about those 6 words that finally broke through her denial: "Look pretty, but stay away." I became so small," Natalia whispered, staring into her tea. "I don't even know when it happened. One day, I was a woman with plans and dreams. And the next I was just someone's wife, someone's accessory. Someone who took up too much space even when I barely existed." Elena reached over and squeezed her hand. "Then maybe it's time to remember. To take up all the space you deserve. To be so brilliantly, unapologetically yourself that the world has no choice but to see you." Like that night. Natalia stood in front of the bathroom mirror in Elena's cottage, wearing borrowed pajamas, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked at herself, really looked for the first time in years. Behind the exhaustion and the pain, she saw something she'd almost forgotten. Strength, fire, possibility. She touched her reflection and made a promise in the quiet darkness. "I'm going to find you again. The real me. Not the woman he wanted me to be. Not the perfect wife who stayed in the background. I'm going to bloom so bright that I blind everyone who thought I was meant to wither." And in that moment, standing alone in a borrowed bathroom in the middle of nowhere, Natalia Romano began the journey back to herself. She didn't know yet that her transformation would shake the foundations of everything Damian thought he controlled. She didn't know that the man who told her to stay away would soon be desperate to pull her close. All she knew was that she was finally, beautifully, terrifyingly free, and that was enough to begin. The morning sun filtered through lace curtains, painting golden patterns across the wooden floor. Natalia woke to the sound of birds instead of traffic, to silence instead of Damian's alarm clock demanding another day of performance. For a moment, she forgot where she was, then remembered. She was free. Elena was already in the kitchen, humming while flipping pancakes. The cottage smelled like maple syrup and coffee, like comfort and possibility. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," Elena called out, her smile genuine and undemanding. "How did you sleep?" "Like I hadn't slept in years," Natalia admitted, padding into the kitchen barefoot. She wore Elena's old university sweatshirt and felt more herself than she had in any designer dress. The first few days passed in a gentle rhythm. Long walks through meadows where wildflowers grew without permission, afternoons spent on the porch with books Natalia had always meant to read, evenings filled with conversation that actually mattered, not the shallow exchanges she'd perfected at charity dinners. Elena never pushed, never demanded explanations. She simply created space for Natalia to breathe. But on the fourth morning, Elena made a suggestion that would change everything. "There's a renovation project in town. The old Riverside Inn. They're looking for someone with design experience to help restore it. The owner, Thomas, mentioned it at the market yesterday." Natalia felt something stir inside her. Something she thought Damian had killed. Excitement. Before marriage. She'd studied interior design, won awards, dreamed of transforming spaces into stories. Then Catherine Archer had made it clear that working was beneath the wife of her son. Damian had agreed, saying her job was to manage their home and accompany him to events. Her dreams got filed away like old tax returns. "I haven't worked in 7 years, Natalia said quietly, fear creeping into her voice. "Then maybe it's time to remember what you're capable of," Elena replied, pouring more coffee. "Not for Damian. Not for anyone else. For you." That afternoon, Natalia found herself standing before the Riverside Inn. A beautiful Victorian building worn by time but still proud. The wraparound porch sagged slightly, paint peeled from the shutters, but the bones were magnificent. She could see what it could become, the way she used to see potential in everything before she learned to see only her own inadequacy. A man emerged from the front door, wiping plaster dust from his hands. He was tall, with kind eyes, and an easy smile that didn't calculate what he could gain from her. "You must be Natalia." Elena called ahead. "I'm Benjamin Cole, the architect on this project." His handshake was firm but gentle, his presence calming. "Elena says you have an eye for design." "I used to," Natalia heard herself say. "I'm not sure what I have anymore." Benjamin tilted his head, studying her with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. "Well, how about you walk through with me? Tell me what you see. No pressure, no expectations. Just honest observations." They spent the next 2 hours exploring the inn. At first, Natalia held back, her voice tentative, years of being dismissed, making her doubt every instinct. But Benjamin listened to every word, asked thoughtful questions, treated her ideas like they mattered. Slowly, something dormant inside her began to wake up. This staircase, she found herself saying, running her hand along the carved banister, it should be the focal point. Natural wood restored, not painted over. And these windows, their original wavy glass, most people would replace them, but they tell the building's story. Benjamin was taking notes, nodding enthusiastically. "Yes, exactly. You understand that restoration isn't about making something new. It's about honoring what it was while giving it new life." The words hit Natalia harder than he could have known. Isn't that what she was trying to do with herself? Honor who she was while building something new. As the sun began to set, painting the inn in amber light, Benjamin made an offer. "I'd like you to consult on this project. Paid position. Your ideas are exactly what this place needs." Part of her wanted to say yes immediately. Another part, the part trained by years of Damian's control, whispered that she couldn't, shouldn't, wasn't qualified. "I need to think about it," she managed. "Of course," Benjamin said. "But, Natalia, whatever made you stop designing, whatever made you doubt yourself, it was wrong. I can see your talent in the way you look at spaces, the way you understand them. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." That night, Natalia couldn't sleep. She lay in Elena's guest room, staring at the ceiling, Benjamin's words echoing in her mind. For the first time in years, someone had seen her potential instead of her usefulness. Someone had valued her mind instead of her appearance. Meanwhile, 2 hours south in the city, Damian Archer was unraveling. The first few days after Natalia left, he'd been annoyed but unconcerned. She'd done this before, stayed at a hotel for a night after an argument, always returning by morning. But this time was different. Her phone remained off, her credit cards untouched. It was as if she'd vanished. His mother, Catherine, had noticed immediately. "Where's your wife?" "The Hendersons are hosting their annual garden party. You need to attend with her." "She's visiting a friend," Damian had said smoothly, maintaining appearances. But as days turned into a week, His irritation turned to something else. Concern? No, he told himself. Just inconvenience. The house felt strangely empty. His assistant kept asking who would handle the upcoming charity auction planning. His colleagues made jokes about his wife finally leaving him that stung more than they should have. He found himself in their bedroom, looking at her things. The books stacked on her nightstand, titles he'd never noticed. The sketch pad tucked in her drawer, filled with beautiful room designs he'd never seen. A journal with an entry that made his chest tighten. I wonder if he ever loved me, or just loved having someone to complete his image. For the first time, Damian felt something crack in his carefully constructed world. He'd always believed he was generous, giving Natalia a life of luxury, freeing her from the burden of work. But looking at her sketches, reading her words, he saw a different story. He'd taken a brilliant woman and turned her into a decoration. He'd taken someone with dreams and convinced her they didn't matter. His business partner, Richard Foster, noticed his distraction during a meeting. Everything all right, Damian? You seem off. My wife left, Damian admitted, surprising himself. Left or left? Richard asked carefully. I don't know, Damian said, and realized it was the most honest thing he'd said in weeks. I told her to look pretty, but stay away, and I think she finally listened. Richard was quiet for a moment. My first wife left me for similar reasons. I was so focused on building my empire that I forgot to build a partnership. By the time I realized what I'd lost, she'd already found herself, and she was magnificent without me. The words haunted Damian. That night, he hired a private investigator. Not to force Natalia back, he told himself, but to make sure she was safe. When the report came back with Elena's cottage address, Damian stared at it for a long time. His first instinct was to drive there immediately, to bring her home. To fix this the way he fixed everything else in his life with money and power. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the memory of her face at that gala, the way the light had died in her eyes. Maybe it was reading her journal and realizing he'd never really known his own wife. Or maybe it was the terrifying realization that if she came back now, it would only be out of habit, not love. Back at the cottage, Natalia made her decision. The next morning, she called Benjamin. I'll take the position. I want to work on the inn. Elena cheered, pulling her into a hug. Over the following weeks, Natalia threw herself into the restoration project. She arrived at the inn every morning, dressed in jeans and work boots instead of designer labels. She got dust in her hair, paint on her hands, and purpose in her heart. Benjamin became more than a colleague. He was the kind of person who asked her opinion and actually listened, who brought her coffee without being asked, who noticed when she was tired and suggested breaks without making her feel weak. Their conversations ranged from architecture to philosophy, from design principles to life dreams. Why did you stop designing? Benjamin asked one afternoon as they reviewed fabric samples. Natalia hesitated, then decided on honesty. My husband thought it was beneath me. His mother thought working wives reflected poorly on the family name, and I was so eager to be loved that I made myself smaller and smaller until I almost disappeared. Benjamin set down his pencil, his expression serious. Speaking as someone who's watched you work these past weeks, I can tell you that you were meant to create Natalia. It's not something you do. It's something you are. And anyone who asked you to stop was asking you to stop breathing. His words planted seeds in soil that was finally ready to grow. Natalia felt herself changing, not into someone new, but back into someone she'd forgotten. She laughed more easily, spoke more confidently, started sketching again in the evenings, designs flowing from her pencil like water from a dam finally broken. One evening, Elena found her on the porch, watching the sunset with a peaceful expression. You look different, Elena observed. I feel different, Natalia admitted. I feel like myself, and Damian. He's been calling me, you know, asking about you. Natalia's stomach tightened, but not with the old fear. With something closer to resolution, what did you tell him? That you're exactly where you need to be. That if he wants to talk to you, he needs to respect your space. Elena paused. He sounded different, too. Less demanding. Almost desperate. Natalia nodded slowly. Part of her felt satisfaction at that, but a larger part felt something else. Sadness for what they'd never really been. Relief that she'd finally escaped. And hope, fragile but growing, that she could build something real now, with or without him. As the weeks passed, the inn transformed. And so did Natalia. The woman who'd arrived broken and doubting now moved through spaces with confidence. Made decisions without second-guessing, laughed without permission. Benjamin watched her transformation with quiet admiration that was becoming something more, something neither of them had named yet. But both felt growing between them like the flowers in Elena's garden. What Natalia didn't know was that Damian had driven to the cottage 3 times, parking down the road, watching the lights in the windows, trying to work up the courage to knock on the door. Each time he'd seen her through the window, laughing with Elena or sketching, looking more alive than she'd looked in their entire marriage, and each time he'd driven away, knowing he had no right to interrupt her healing with his regret. But tonight would be different. Tonight, there was a showcase at the town gallery, featuring the restoration plans for the Riverside Inn, and Damian Archer, who had finally understood what he'd lost, was about to come face to face with the woman he'd taken for granted and the life she was building without him. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything. And this time, Natalia would not be the gallery in town was modest compared to the grand venues Natalia once attended on Damian's arm. But tonight it felt like the most important place in the world. White walls displayed architectural renderings and design concepts for the Riverside Inn restoration. Natalia's sketches, brought to life in watercolors and digital mock-ups, told the story of a building being reborn. And perhaps, though she didn't say it aloud, the story of a woman being reborn too. She wore a simple cream dress, her own choice from a local boutique, not a designer label selected to impress strangers. Her hair fell in natural waves, and her makeup was light, enhancing rather than masking. When she looked in the mirror before leaving Elena's cottage, she saw someone she recognized. Someone she liked. "You're glowing," Elena said, squeezing her shoulder. "Not because of expensive creams or salon treatments, because you're alive again." Benjamin arrived to pick them up, his eyes lighting up when he saw Natalia. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and she knew he meant it in a way that had nothing to do with performance or appearance. He meant she looked happy, whole, real. The gallery filled quickly with townspeople, local business owners, and Preservation Society members. Thomas, the inn's owner, greeted guests with enthusiasm, repeatedly crediting Natalia's vision for bringing the project to life. People approached her with genuine questions about her design choices, listened to her explanations, respected her expertise. She felt seen in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Then the door opened, and the air in the room changed. Damian Archer stood in the entrance, looking out of place in his expensive suit among the casual town crowd. His eyes scanned the gallery until they found her, and for a moment everything else faded. Natalia felt her heart hammer in her chest, but it wasn't the old fear. It was the racing pulse of someone about to face a truth they'd been avoiding. Elena moved closer, protective. Benjamin noticed the tension and subtly positioned himself nearby, but Natalia raised a hand gently, silently telling them she could handle this. She had to handle this. Damian approached slowly, weaving through the crowd, his expression unreadable. When he reached her, he stopped a respectful distance away, as if unsure of his welcome. "Natalia," he said, and his voice carried something she'd never heard before. "Uncertainty."
"Damian,"
she replied calmly. "This is unexpected." "I needed to see you," he said. Around them, people pretended not to watch while absolutely watching. Small towns were like that. "Can we talk?" Privately. She considered refusing, considered making him feel as dismissed as he'd made her feel for years. But that wasn't who she wanted to be. She nodded toward a quiet corner of the gallery,
away from listening ears.
When they were alone, Damian seemed to struggle for words. The man who commanded boardrooms, who negotiated million-dollar deals, stood before his wife tongue-tied. "Your work is incredible," he finally said, gesturing toward her designs. "I never knew you were this talented." He never asked, Natalia said simply, without accusation, just fact. He flinched as if she'd slapped him. No. I'm realizing there's a lot I never asked, never noticed, never valued. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd seen 1,000 times, but never directed at himself. Natalia, I've been an arrogant fool. I treated you like an accessory, like your only value was standing beside me looking appropriate. I told you to look pretty but stay away, and God, I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking exactly what you always thought, Natalia said, her voice steady despite the emotion churning inside. That I existed to enhance your image, not to live my own life. That my dreams were hobbies and yours were destiny. That loving me meant providing for me financially while starving me emotionally. Yes, he admitted, the word raw. Yes, I thought all of that. I was raised to believe that's what marriage was. My father treated my mother the same way, and she seemed content, so I assumed you were too. But I was wrong, Natalia. I see that now. What changed? She asked, genuinely curious. Why now? Why not after any of the 100 other times I tried to tell you I was unhappy? Damian looked at the floor, shame coloring his features. Because you were always there. You always came back. I took you for granted because I thought you always would. But when you left and stayed gone, when I sat in our empty house and read your journal and saw your sketches hidden in drawers, I realized I'd been married to a stranger. A stranger I'd created by refusing to see the real you, one who faded into the background. Natalia felt tears prick her eyes, but they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of release, of finally being acknowledged, a validation she'd craved for so long. But she also felt something else. The realization that acknowledgement, while meaningful, wasn't enough. Do you know what the saddest part is? She said softly. I loved you so completely that I erased myself trying to be what you wanted. I stopped designing because you said I should. I stopped seeing my friends because they didn't fit your image. I stopped laughing too loud, expressing opinions, taking up space. I became a ghost in my own life, and you liked me better that way. I didn't like you better, Damian protested. I just didn't notice the difference because I wasn't paying attention. And that's worse, isn't it? I was so focused on building my empire that I destroyed my home. Across the gallery, Benjamin glanced over, concern in his eyes. Natalia gave him a small smile, letting him know she was okay. Damian followed her gaze and something hardened in his expression. Is he why you left? No, Natalia said firmly. I left because of you. Because of me. Because I finally hit a bottom where I either had to climb back up or disappear completely. Benjamin is someone who saw my talent and encouraged it. He's a reminder of what healthy respect looks like. But he's not why I left. You are why I left. Damian absorbed this, nodding slowly. I want you to come home. We can start over. I'll be different, I promise. We can go to counseling. I'll give you space for your work. I'll actually be a partner instead of just a provider. Part of Natalia. The part that had spent 7 years trying to fix their marriage, wanted to believe him. Wanted to think that love could be enough, that change was possible. That the man standing before her with regret in his eyes could become the partner she'd always needed. But another part of her. The part that had been reborn in Elena's cottage and strengthened in the Riverside Inn knew better. Knew that real change took time, not promises. Knew that she'd spent too many years shrinking to fit his world, to trust that his world would expand to fit her. I appreciate you saying that, Natalia said carefully. And I believe you mean it right now, in this moment. But Damian, I don't want to come back to who we were. I don't even want to come back to a better version of who we were. I want to keep becoming who I'm meant to be. Can do that at home with me, he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. Can I? She challenged gently. Can I really be myself in a house where your mother still has a key and opinions about everything I do? In a life where I'm still Mrs. Damian Archer first and Natalia Romano second? In a marriage that we built on a foundation of me serving your needs and mine being optional? Damian opened his mouth, then closed it, unable to argue with the truth. I'm not saying never, Natalia continued, and she saw hope flare in his eyes. I'm saying not now. Not like this. If you really want to change, then change for yourself, not to get me back. Go to counseling alone. Figure out why you treated me that way. Learn to value women as equals, not accessories. And maybe, someday, if we both grow into better versions of ourselves, we can see if there's something worth rebuilding. How long? Damian asked, his voice breaking slightly. How long do I have to wait? I don't know, Natalia admitted honestly. Maybe months. Maybe years. Maybe forever. I can't promise you anything except that I'm not coming back until I'm sure I'm coming back for the right reasons. Not out of habit or guilt or fear. She watched him process this. Saw the stages of grief play across his face. Denial, anger, bargaining, all flickering past until something like acceptance settled in. I deserve this, he said finally. I deserve to wait. I deserve to wonder if you'll ever come back. Because you waited 4 years for me to see you and I never did. This isn't about punishment, Natalia said gently. It's about healing. Both of us need to heal separately before we could ever heal together. Damian nodded, tears now visible in his eyes, a vulnerability she'd never seen in him. I love you, Natalia. I know I showed it terribly, but I do love you. And I'm going to prove it, even if you're not there to see it. I'm going to become the man you deserved from the beginning, and do that, she said. Not for me. For you, he reached out as if to touch her face, then stopped himself, respecting the boundary between them. Your work is brilliant, he said again. This inn is lucky to have your vision. You're going to do amazing things, and I'm sorry I never saw that before. Thank you, Natalia said, and meant it. Damian turned to leave, then paused. That Benjamin guy. Is he good to you? Natalia smiled slightly. He's my colleague, my friend. And yes, he's kind, sees me. But this isn't about him either. This is about me learning to see myself. Good, Damian said, and there was genuine warmth in his voice. You deserve that. You deserve everything. He walked away then, stopping briefly to shake Benjamin's hand with unexpected grace, nodding to Elena with respect, and leaving the gallery with his shoulders a little less straight, his confidence a little less certain. He looked, Natalia thought, almost human. Benjamin approached carefully. Are you all right? I am, Natalia said, surprised to find it true. I really am. It took courage, Elena added, joining them. Standing your ground like that? Choosing yourself. It didn't feel like courage, Natalia admitted. It felt like survival, like finally understanding that I can't save someone else while I'm drowning. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and conversations. Thomas announced that based on the overwhelming positive response, they were moving forward with the full restoration, with Natalia as lead designer. She accepted with tears in her eyes, not of sadness but of joy, of accomplishment, of finally being valued for her mind and her talent. Later, as Elena drove them home under a sky full of stars, Natalia looked out the window at the passing landscape. She thought about the woman who'd fled a gala in tears, who'd driven through the night not knowing where she was going, only that she couldn't stay where she was. That woman felt like someone from another lifetime. The woman she was now held her head high, spoke her truth, and believed in her own worth. She didn't need Damian to validate her. She didn't need anyone's permission to exist fully and authentically. I'm proud of you, Elena said softly. I'm proud of me too, Natalia replied, and laughed at how good it felt to say that out loud. That night, unable to sleep with all the emotions swirling inside her, Natalia sat on Elena's porch with her sketchpad. She drew not rooms or buildings, but a woman. A woman standing tall, arms outstretched, flowers growing from her fingertips. Below the drawing, she wrote, They told me to look pretty but stay away, as if beauty and presence couldn't coexist. As if being seen and being small were the same thing. But I've learned that true beauty isn't about meeting someone else's standards. It's about blooming into your full self, taking up every inch of space you deserve, and refusing to shrink for anyone's comfort. I am pretty. I am present. I am powerful. And I am finally, completely, wonderfully free. Inside the cottage, her phone buzzed with a message from Benjamin. Coffee tomorrow? I have some new ideas for the inn's grand staircase. I'd love your input. She smiled, typing back a simple yes. Not because she needed validation from him, but because working with someone who respected her was a gift she'd learned to appreciate. Another message came through. This one from an unknown number. When she opened it, she found a link to a therapist's website and a brief note, "First session booked. Thank you for showing me what I need to do. Your husband, who's trying to be better." Natalia didn't respond, but she felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness yet, maybe not ever in the way he hoped. But recognition that growth was possible, that people could change, and that sometimes the kindest thing you could do was step away and let them try. The moon hung full and bright above Elena's cottage, casting silver light across the meadow. Somewhere in the distance, a nightbird sang. Natalia breathed in the cool air, tasting possibility and promise, and thought about all the women who'd been told to be pretty but stay away, to shine but not too bright, to exist but not take up space. This story, her story, was for them. A reminder that there comes a moment when you must choose between being loved and being free, and that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's the only way to build a life worth living. As dawn began to paint the horizon pink and gold, Natalia closed her sketchpad and whispered to the emerging day, "I am not the woman I was. I am not even the woman I'm becoming. I am the woman I always was beneath the fear. And she is magnificent." And with that truth finally spoken, finally believed, Natalia Romano walked back into the cottage, into her new life, into a future she was designing with her own hands. Her own vision, her own unstoppable, undeniable, beautiful self.